Welcome to the fourth episode of the First Steep. As always, I'm Collin, content creator on Twitch and YouTube and TikTok. Sometimes when I remember to, making a lot of tea. I'm not a tea expert. I just enjoy tea a lot. So
And my name is Elyse. I am a tea expert and I don't enjoy tea. I'm just kidding. I was just trying to be opposite of you. Of course, I enjoy tea. It is my life. I love it to death. And I'm stoked to be here. Fourth episode. I can't believe it's already gone that fast
I
since
know.
we started this. But it's lots of fun
Mhm.
and we get to learn about tea. So, what we do in this podcast is we side by side, two different teas. Sometimes it's side by side, sometimes it's one after another, but we juxtapose two different teas to understand their story. And through telling the stories of these teas, how they're different, how they're similar, how they complement each other, we can develop a strong intuition about tea, about tasting tea, and also about understanding where tea comes from, how it's made, what makes different teas so unique, because all of these teas all come from one plant. It's a
Yes.
magical thing.
So I think so far, some of my favorite parts have been like hearing about the actual the tea grower, the tea maker. Specifically, I think so far, the story that you told about the woman who owns a Yankee Tea Factory with the
Yeah,
she's got the and I'm blanking on her name.
Yonku.
Yanku, thank you.
Mhm.
And she has the lion on the above the door. But anyway, just enjoyed that bit a little bit. But
Yeah, yeah, it's a story I love telling as well.
so what are we making tonight?
Yeah, so the focus of tonight's tasting is green teas of northeastern India. Very specific that I say northeastern. We could say India, but
Hmm.
both of these teas are coming from northeast of India, which is almost like its own country, even though it is in India. And um, a lot to be understood about the dynamics of the cultural diversity of India through telling the story of northeastern India, which is usually neglected.
Right.
And northeastern India is like um, the people look different, the cultures are different, the heritages are all different, and so that's where that confusion comes in. And unfortunately, there is quite a bit of marginalization that happens, fetishization, and all of those things that happen with people from this area. But they are making very good tea, and so the two different teas we will be having is a firewood green coming from Heritage Assam tea, as well as Arunachal longleaf green tea.
I was waiting for you to say
And
that first.
Arunachal. And it's
Arunachal?
coming from Arunachal Pradesh, which is the only state of India that borders directly with China. It does have a direct border. And it's actually currently a very contentious area of India. When you go, you actually have to get a special pass with your passport. You can't just show up because there is a lot of conflict. In fact, if you go search Pradesh in the news, more than likely you're going to come across um, some very juicy news about conflicts happening between troops on both sides of the border. In fact, last year there was a really bloody battle that involved zero bombs and zero guns, but lots of people and lots of violence. Very interesting, very
Yeah,
primal
say
stuff going on there.
I did a quick search and on Google and went to news, and the first hit is the Weather Channel. But other than that, yeah, like within the last several days, it's all kinds of yeah, looks like a lot of like type news stuff. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
unfortunate because it's such a beautiful place. Like the first time that I went there, I swore I was in Yunnan. I'm like, I'm in Yunnan right now. Like the people, the communities, like what the houses look like, what everything was like there, reminded me very much of Yunnan, China. And then my friend that had taken me there is like, oh yeah, China is just, 2 kilometers that way. Yunnan is just right there. He's like, yeah, but we're not going over there because there's yeah, I mean, I guess India is just trying to hold its border there. There's some water resources
Right.
that are that's it. That's so interesting how primal stuff like that is still happening in this world over primal things like water.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I actually took a class in college, and okay, this is going to start in a place that is going to be confusing, but
Okay.
bear with me. The topic of the class was zombie films.
Okay.
Okay, and there was a whole like portion of this class actually where we were talking specifically about post-apocalyptic water crisis, right? And there's a piece by Camus, and I can't come up with what it's called. Um, but it's the myth of Sisyphus, maybe. No, that's not what it is. I'm just reading it out loud. Anyway, regardless of anything, there's a piece that we had to read there, and it was just kind of about water crisis, and I'm blanking on exactly what it was. So this is kind of a non thing. But regardless, what I'm getting at is that in a lot of cases, honestly, a lot of conflict throughout history has just been kind of boiled down to water, and
Hmm.
we're seeing that kind of crop up a little bit more now as like urbanization like continues to happen, especially in places that like water is just not accessible. So I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of responding to the that it's interesting that we're still there, and I just got excited and remembered something. Sorry.
Hey, you know what? Like, it brings me comfort. I mean, not the conflict does not, but
Right.
if there's going to be a conflict, if it's over something like that, is better than if it's over other things. Which, even if it is over other things, if you boil down to the core of it, it is always something primal at the end of the
Right.
day, even
Hmm.
though they may say, oh, this is equity or, money. What
It
what is
often goes
money?
past that.
Yeah, it's yeah, we're talking about resources, water, land, fertility, all these things that make a difference.
So shall we make some tea?
Yeah, let's make some tea. I've got
Oh,
my water all going. Do you want to do them one after another, or how do you want to do it?
let's do them side by side. I've got both my guy ones out. I measured out a little bit different, just kind of like my usual go-to starting parameters for a new tea for each one. Say I've got like one for like 3 grams for about 150 milliliters and like 2.5 grams for about 100 milliliters. But I would love to do them side by side if you would.
Sweet. Well, I've got my cupping set here, so I'm all ready to go for side by side.
And I've warmed everything up, so saying I'm just happy to go ahead and make them both at the same time. How long would you recommend I steep for?
Not long. If you're using boiling water, yeah, very much not long
Oh, I'm
is
at
what I recommend.
175.
You're 175. Okay, yeah, maybe 45 seconds, a minute
45 seconds on
be
each.
fine. Yeah.
So, all right. I always forget to smell the dry leaves.
It's okay.
But I will say that I mean, I guess now is a good time to mention it. I mean, I had said before stream, I thought that I was confused as to why. I thought that you might have like gotten the labels crossed because the long leaf green smelled smokier than
Mm-hmm.
the firewood green, and I
Mm-hmm.
had looked up a little bit about each of the teas beforehand, and I had discovered that the firewood green was smoked, and this is like the first smoked green tea I'd come across. So I was very curious about that at least, but.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, that's true. The firewood green from Assam is smoked. Um, it's really cool. I've got the green tea rolling in our background on my stream. I'm like, I'm vibing out to this. Bitcoin, don't get caught up in the tea. It's gonna sweep you in. Sorry, you can't see it, Baka. Me and Bitcoin are having all the fun over here. Um, yeah, so the firewood green from Assam is smoked, is supposed to be smoked, but this batch in particular came out really light in its smokiness, as
Hmm.
you had pointed out. And the Arunachal longleaf, the Arunachal green, is not supposed to be smoked. It is not intentionally smoked. I use the word intentionally because obviously what you smell, um, is smoky,
Right.
and that was unintentional. And we'll speak on that. We'll
Hmm.
definitely speak on that. Both cases is a sign of limited quality control.
Right.
Simply that.
So the long leaf. So I steeped in both about the same amount of time, about 45 seconds to a minute, maybe about 50 seconds in there.
Yeah.
And the long leaf, I got like a kind of a almost pinkish green type color, right?
Ooh, pink.
Um, whereas as the firewood green is giving me kind of that kind of like really light, almost clear green color. So I don't know, just
Cool.
observations of the tea, but all right. Are you steeping?
I just put my water
Cool.
in.
I
Please.
will. No, I will wait for you. I would love to share the first steep with you.
Oh, Bitcoin's excited.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is excited.
So something that did kind of interest me about these two teas specifically when you kind of brought them up is that or told me that this is what we're going to be drinking tonight is just specifically that I this is the first time I think I'm having a green tea from a tea plantation or from tea farms in Assam actually. So and
Yeah.
because I know that that is not a common style of tea that's made there. Oftentimes the tea grown there is for Western style teas. The CTC leaves, for tea bags and stuff. So
Yes.
I'm very intrigued to taste. I guess because I personally feel like the green tea kind of gives me almost like a better taste of like the terroir, the earth, that kind of stuff, just kind of like white tea does over black tea. So
I am also seeing a very different color
yeah.
from both cups. Yeah, the firewood green is coming out a bit clearer, and then
Mm-hmm.
the Arunachal is coming out darker in color and yeah, kind of pinkish.
Yeah,
It's a bit more cloudy as well. It's not as
it's got like a salmon
clean
like color.
looking. Yeah, that's a good description. Salmon. Salmon.
Which one are
All
we
right.
trying first? Shall we?
Let's go for the let's you'll understand why after we drink it, but let's do the firewood green first.
Well, cheers, Elyse.
Cheers, Collin. Thank you so much. Mm.
That smoke is like super light. Hmm.
Yeah, it is super light, but it's there.
Right, and it almost like kind of like just it introduces itself kind of in the throat, right? And so last week, I said something I think about paying more attention to drinking my tea and not just having tea.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I've heard from others and have thought about is kind of mouth feel, but also how does that feel like in your throat and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
the tea itself, that smoky flavor comes through much more in the throat. And I know last week we also talked about Wake On,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's necessarily this, but
No, it's not.
no. And that's what I mean.
Unfortunately, I have had a green tea from this producer, not from this garden. So the producer has planted from seed several tea bushes in their own private garden just outside their factory.
Mm-hmm.
And in the third year of the plant's lives, they harvested very young buds early in the season and handmade a batch of green tea, which ended up being the best tea of my tour of 2017,
Nice.
which was a trip because I went to a lot of great places. I even went to um NG Baicha, where Angie Baicha comes from.
Oh wow.
And that green tea was even better. And I sampled it with tea masters everywhere I went, and they were like, "Where is this tea from?" And I'm like, "This tea is from Assam." And they were like, "What?
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not possible."
I'm having
And
trouble believing this tea is from Assam.
right? Yeah, because Assam has this reputation in the market and in the tea industry for being this overly brisk, very, strong tea suited, broadleaf tea suited for black tea and for very astringent, strong black tea like CTC, as you mentioned.
That
That's always what it was.
that
Yes.
British taste, as I know it's
Hmm.
called sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you know why they like that,
Right.
and it's all in cahoots with the sugar and the milk industry, mostly the sugar industry, but to a lesser extent the milk industry as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think teas like this and projects like this, as just like bust so many myths there are about tea. Oh, Bitcoin's getting really close to my mic,
Yeah,
huh?
I
You're
can hear
hearing
him.
him? He's like, I got something to say for the podcast too.
Let's hear it, Bitcoin.
What do you got to say, Bitcoin?
Oh, is
Oh
that
my
so?
goodness. He's really vocal tonight. Yeah, teas like this really bust a lot of myths there are in the
Hmm.
tea industry. One of them being around variety. Like, oh, that's a broadleaf. There's no way you can produce anything sweet from that.
Hmm.
That's one myth that exists. Another myth is in regards to elevation. And as you know, Assam is not a high elevation origin.
It's like
Yet,
at sea level, right?
yeah, it's very low elevation. Yeah, it's pretty much sea level. It's probably a little bit above, but
There's
I mean,
say
anything below like 1,000 meters is really just considered low elevation. So
the tea itself is super sweet though, like and sweet in the relative tea sense, obviously,
yeah,
but there is like this kind of warm kind of sweetness to it, which is interesting because like that I feel like that warmth is reminiscent of like a higher quality like Assam black tea, right? Like when you get that like really good like whole leaf Assam black tea and you brew it just right, it does have kind of that like warm, cozy, malty flavor.
hmm,
It's really easy to overbrew though, and just often what I do. But um, that is still present in this tea, which is interesting because it's not quite as like I feel like bright and brisk as most green teas, like Chinese green tea that I'm used to would be. Um, but I don't know. I guess that kind of is the whole point of what we talk about with terroir, right? That would be something that I would imagine would be as a result of that. But yeah.
yeah, it's always a surprise.
Mhm.
And this batch in particular is a surprise because this producer, Rajan Barua, the tea maker behind this tea, he has been producing this tea for several years and supplying it on our platform. And a lot of buyers they really like this tea and have made it a part of their catalog. And this particular batch was very problematic for us because when it arrived, and I sampled it out with people, there was a noticeable reduction in the amount of smokiness in the tea. And yeah, it was problematic. And actually, that year, these two teas came during the same harvest, the same batch. The Arunachal, even though it's in a different state, Rajan Barua is still consulting and helping produce the tea.
Right.
So he facilitates that relationship for us. I have been, to this village where this tea is grown and produced, and thank goodness this Arunachal green tea came. It was supposed to be just a mild steamed green tea, but it ended up coming very smoky. And maybe that's a good transition for us to
Yeah.
move on to the next tea and have a taste of it.
Say, I was gonna say, shall we try?
Yes.
Cheers.
Yes. Cheers. Mmm. That's yummy.
I can definitely taste a smoky flavor there, though.
You definitely taste it.
That
Yeah.
is that is much closer to like a smoked tea flavor that I am used to right there. And that what's interesting though is that that smoked flavor like pushes that green tea flavor forward too with it. And so I looked at the grower profile for Heritage Tea Assam before we started because I like to make sure that I familiarize myself. So there's something if I want to talk about, I can or ask
Yeah.
a question about.
Yeah.
As you do. But something that I thought was that I noticed was that they do act as a collective, and what I'm
Mhm.
curious about is are they a farm as well? Like specifically like that the firewood green, like is that something that they're growing themselves and then sourcing the Arunachal longleaf as part of like that kind of cooperative type setup, or
Yeah.
how's that working?
Yeah. So they work with close to a dozen small growers in their area. And the firewood green or any of the other teas that we have from them in our catalog are all coming from that collective.
Hmm.
Now, I was telling you how they have that um, that special batch of green tea, that handmade batch of green tea that I took and shared with tea masters, and they were all surprised by it. That batch, which was hand harvested, specially hand harvested, was from their particular, it's like a quarter acre, I believe, is the size of the little thing outside their factory. And they will continue to grow that. And those are grown from seed, right? And I don't
Right.
know if we've talked in great detail about seed grown tea.
No, but I
Um,
was reading something or other about that. Like actually, I think last night, just from got there somehow. So it's kind of funny that we're bringing this up here because I know a thing now that matters about growing from seed.
yeah, there's a lot that matters from growing from seed. So they're growing that from seed, which means that those trees are potentially going to be growing for decades, centuries to come, and supplying tea. But they are working for the most part with small tea growers. Now, Assam, the state of Assam, is at like 67% of their entire tea supply is coming from small tea growers.
Hmm.
So there are large estates there. There are enormous estates
Right.
that are, over 1,000 hectares large with thousands of employees there. But even despite that, there's still even more small tea growers that own anywhere from like 1 to 4 acres of land, just managing their own little land. And they sell their tea leaf, their raw tea leaf, to what's called the bot leaf factory.
Right.
And the bot leaf factory will process the CTC. Most of that tea, like 99.9% of the tea, is getting processed into CTC. Orthodox tea production has pretty much left the entire state. There's places like Heritage as well as Kanoka, and a handful of other projects that are launching off, that are bringing more of that artisanal Orthodox production back. But for the most part, it's all going to CTC. So Rajan has specifically targeted people, small tea growers in his community that he can trust, that are like family to him, right? Because
Hmm.
he's from this area, and has empowered them with like organic agriculture practices, quality cultivars for them to plant. I am playing a video now. Would you like me to screen share it for
Yeah. Sure.
you?
Sure. Go
Cool.
for it.
I'll do it. Um, Let me turn you off. I mean, sure, I'll turn you off. Bye bye. All right, so this is like uh their star small grower that they work with.
Sure.
Um, So we were at his garden looking at his leaf. This is the leaf that would go towards like this firewood green,
Hmm.
or the Assam Pecco, or the longleaf orthodox that we do get from this garden. Like the handmade specialty batches we get from them are coming from their own garden. But you can see the size of his garden. I think his garden was about four acres, and he said that it was one of the larger small tea growers in their network. Um,
I
what's
love
really
his like
interesting,
fierce look on his face. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of interesting. Let's see, what's the next video? I'll just like scan through our videos. You can take a look at things. Really beautiful.
Yeah.
This was during the first flush time, so we got that prime look. But what's really fascinating about what Rajan has done in this area and with this network of small tea growers, other than paying them better,
Hmm.
which is what they do, because like they pay more than the bought leaf factory do for the leaf. But he empowers them to like add more value to their gardens. And the main thing is through organic. That's difficult. It's such a challenge when you're working within a system that only pays you with bulk, with quantity. It is very difficult to get ahead. And that's the main reason why agricultural chemicals have become so prevalent.
Right.
Like these people, this is their homeland, this is their community, this is their land, this is their livelihood. Like, why the heck would they want to put chemicals on it? And ultimately, okay, so here's a look at the roots of the trees. It's always nice to see.
Oh yeah.
Always nice to see.
I like seeing the trees.
Yeah, yeah. So that's me in the background.
Nice.
Yeah. Um,
Wow.
not the healthiest. You definitely would want it to be more lush feeling.
Right.
You see this like on the right here, like you can tell that this land has been converted
Hmm.
from conventional to organic, because in conventional agriculture, the the land becomes hard packed. It's almost like styrofoam. There's just been so many pesticides and herbicides that have killed any of the biodiversity there. And then water does not retain, right? Because
Hmm.
there's nothing on the top of the soil to hold the water in. Like you have tree roots and you have fungus systems, like all of those things help hold water in the soil. And then of course a cover crop, usually some kind of weed, something just growing on the top of the soil, um, will keep the soil shaded so that the sun does not evaporate the water.
Right.
And so in the case here, the soil, like there's still some restoration being done on the soil, and that restoration can take decades.
So that's what I was going to ask because I know that I've heard other in other conversation with like tea vendors or tea farmers, uh, like specifically in India, talking about like changing the biodiversity of the land, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't fully understand what that meant, but I'm starting to kind of think I understand what that means now, because it to me it seems like it looks like there's kind of this push to, I guess, get away from that kind of more industrialized use of the land into something a little bit more organic like this. But
Yes,
yeah,
that's totally it. That's
yeah,
totally
okay,
it. So like monoculture and
hmm,
biodiversity are the two total opposites.
right.
And so
Well, yeah,
they are, right? Duh.
makes sense. Yeah, I understand Latin just enough.
And so yeah, it makes it such a challenge to like when you polarize it on that way, it's like, okay, it's either biodiversity or it's monoculture. And there's actually a lot in between.
Mhm. Right.
Like even if you're doing organic things, if you're using organic manures, you could still be supporting the monoculture, which is usually the case. Because like monoculture is this like efficiency mindset where we are going to optimize this land, which is a finite resource, a valuable
Yes.
resource, land is. So we're going to optimize this land space and plant only the one thing to optimize our yields to come from this land. But when you do monoculture, then that's the opposite of biodiversity. And and then so you're ridding the biodiversity, and the role that biodiversity plays, like there's lots of roles, but like the main one that immediately affects the productivity of the land is retention of water.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's nutrients. Yes, there's so many other things going on, including the like mycelium networks. I don't know. We have we talked about mushrooms yet?
Oh, we have not, but I'm so ready. Tell me about mushrooms.
Well, I mean, it's a common theme. I'm sure we'll talk about mushrooms again and again and again, like mycelium networks
Mm.
that are just in the ground that kind of serve as the internet for the world. They really do.
Oh, I like that a lot. Okay.
Transmitting information. So
Yes,
like
sure.
even a tree that's over here and then like an acre down the way is another tree. There is a mycelium network underneath the ground that keeps those trees connected. And they'll let the trees know about allocation of resources, about water, about everything that's important for them to live. Yeah, so it's like the internet system. And so when you use pesticides and when you use
That is amazing.
herbicides,
Sorry.
you're killing the mycelium networks,
Right.
and it's just like so bonkers. It's so easy to understand this stuff, and you talk to any plant scientist or any scientist in general, and yeah, duh, we all know about mycelium networks. I was like, well, then why are we so excited about monoculture? And it's a business thing. It's always comes down to the balance sheet that things have to be higher on the profit end, and things like mycelium networks are externalized costs that get forgotten and avoided in that whole equation.
Well, I think like
uh,
with a lot of stuff in regard to I, business and whatnot, industrialization is really kind of a key factor to how we got to where we are, and how that mindset works, right? Because like during industrialization of the British colonial system and stuff like that, I mean, I feel like plant science wasn't really where we are now, and so I think that there are still a lot of those kind of mindsets and ideals and values of industrialization that we still really hold dear today, specifically that efficiency and that efficient use of resource like land.
yeah,
And I definitely kind of see that a lot of that going on here, right? Because like monoculture being this, like, this is the way to maximize profit by maximizing yield of this one specific thing. Like that is a very industrial like mindset. And I have always wondered if the Industrial Revolution actually ever ended, or if we're still in it. Um, but
we're
yeah,
definitely like in the hangover phase, if anything.
or at least industrial phase or industrial revolution part two, electric boogaloo. I don't, but it's interesting because I feel like that this, what you're kind of talking about here with this kind of switched from monoculture to more biodiversity, specifically in tea farms, because it seems to be a trend when we talk about the
Hmm.
tea farms.
Hmm.
Is and I feel like I see more of that as well across the globe, honestly, which is interesting.
Hmm.
But I don't know if the actual path to getting there is what we think it is. But regardless, um, I don't know. It's just I'm curious to see then what this tea might taste like in however many years it would take for that land to kind of
Yeah,
return.
yeah,
So
and you would taste a difference. You
right,
would taste a
right,
difference. I mean, that's why really like ecologically grown pu'er, like old tree pu'er, tastes so different,
yes,
is because there's so much of that unadulterated wisdom that's allowed to be there. Oh yeah, we did talk about the mushroom last week because I was showing you all of the growth on the
yes, we
trees.
did, we did. You are right,
That's fungus. That's
right.
mushroom. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not mushroom, but it's mycelium, and it's part of those mycelium networks. And those mycelium networks survive for thousands of years and hold data
Oh
from
wow,
thousands of years. And so that's the wisdom. That's the wisdom that we're talking about when we're talking about deep roots that are coming from soil that have these like ancient databases, basically. Like it's such a cool
So,
thing to think about. But I did, speaking of like efficient use of resources,
mhm,
I stood still on the video right here. This is very important because I want to talk about the resource of men.
sure.
Um, because it's a little weird that this man is standing here, and even more weird that he has his hand in a position as if he's working. Um,
Because he's not.
he's pretending. There's a camera there. I mean, this is such a ridiculous thing. It's so obvious. I I'll show you other videos so you can get a context of what I'm talking about. Like, but this is like the one video that we caught him actually trying to work, right? Oh, yeah, he picked something. He looked at us. He's like, "Oh, see, I'm doing something." And you see, he's got nothing hanging on his head. He's the supervisor. They called him supervisor,
He's also
and
not
I
like
tried to
dressed.
ask him what he does as supervisor because I wanted to understand because these ladies were all working very hard,
Hmm.
and that's like this is another really big issue, and it's related to biodiversity. When you talk about biodiversity, you're essentially talking about like an egalitarian system where everybody has value, everything has value. And when it comes to labor and tea, and I think this is the same in a lot of other agricultural products, but in tea, it's like women by far take the blunt end on the labor and get the short end of stick when it comes to the allocation of resources, specifically pay,
Mm.
and just general dignity, because they still have to go home and take care of their families, after working a full day. And oftentimes, men are in positions, supervisory type of positions like that other man is, where they don't do anything. They're just there to just overlook everything and make sure, I don't know, everybody's following the rules. But I mean, these ladies are working very hard and just, you know,
Yeah.
and the men, they'll work in the factories, but these ladies, they'll work in the factory too. Like they do all the heavy lifting in the factory. The men do like the supervisory type of work. So like supervising, working really hard. Oh, we caught him. What? Nope, he didn't pick anything. Nope, he's just walking
Oh,
past.
he's close.
Did he pick something? Nope. He wanted to be in the camera though. He was like obsessed with the camera.
So, speaking as somebody that has a degree in like video production, art, media, that
Yeah,
type stuff, you pull a camera out and you've got two types of people:
yeah.
run away,
Uh-huh.
or any opportunity they can find to be in front of that camera, they will take it. Period. End of story. Like, it is so rare that you meet someone that's just chill when the camera like appears. But it, yeah, I don't know. You can definitely tell that he's like trying to kind of maintain an image. I guess it's pretty clear by his facial expression.
He's looking pretty fly though. I
Yeah.
mean, these ladies like they're working.
Well, see, that's the thing too, is that he's definitely not dressed to be working in the field.
Both of them looking pretty fly. He's got his like bowling dad shirt on. I think he might have had his collar popped too, the young guy. Popping collars while you're working out in the tea field.
By the way, I went in for a second infusion on these two teas, and
Yeah.
I went a little bit shorter on this one, and
Mm-hmm.
reheated my water because it was like kind of like teetering below 175. And it's definitely, I think I prefer the shorter steep, specifically that 45 seconds on both of them. It was like a little bit like too much of that green tea flavor, but like too much of the cajun.
So yeah, so you went shorter.
Slightly
You're saying
shorter.
okay, cool. I was gonna recommend maybe on the third steep we should do this. Like let's go hard.
Oh yeah, why not?
Yeah, let's go
Like,
really hard and kind of see what
give the leaves a
happens to the
beating.
tea after we give it a beating. The only violence that we advocate for around here is you know, brutalize your tea leaves. That's
Something
it.
something fun that I've kind of learned from making tea in this fashion is that
Yeah.
there is a, like, almost like an encouragement, and I don't mean like, when you're like reading like or like doing your research on tea and stuff, like they're telling like the what you're reading is telling you to do this so much as like the leaves themselves like to feel like they're telling me like, yeah, boiling water, 20 minutes, do it. Like there's such an encouragement for like experimenting and kind of playing around. Like every now and then I'm just like, 30 minutes steep, gonna give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah. See, see how many taste buds I can denature with all the tannins.
By the way, real fast, I'm gonna respond to something that's been said in my chat here,
Okay.
by Beryl. Beryl here, you were talking about the Okay, just making sure you're still moving on my screen. You were talking about, like the women doing the a lot of the picking, right?
Yeah.
And he's they're saying that women are fairly known for picking in India, because especially in India about women getting the short end of the stick, and which
Mm.
that just is a horror. It's just a trend worldwide. I don't know what's going on. I know exactly what's going on. I don't need to pretend. It's a problem.
Fuck the
But
patriarchy.
yes.
All right. Just had
But
to get it out.
anyway, Beryl here has said that they've watched a movie on specifically like women and the and like labor in India is what I imagine they're saying. So Beryl, if you're still in chat, feel free to share that film with us. I would love to kind of like shout it out on stream here so we can
Yeah, I
check it
mean,
out
speaking
potentially.
of women in the tea industry, specifically in Assam, which is what we're
Yeah.
talking about here, there's a pretty shocking figure, and I'm sure it's even worse now since the pandemic has happened. But in the state of Assam, every year there are 3 girls kidnapped per estate, and there's over 1,000 estates.
Is that like an average like stat?
That's an average stat.
Okay, I understand. I okay. Okay.
But every tea estate has an experience of a teenage girl, young teenage, um, missing, from their
Hmm.
home. And the only explanation that people give for this is, and a lot of times the parents know, because there are like human traffickers that will come into these tea growing villages, romance these young girls, convince these young girls and their parents, like they'll get a permission from the parents to take
Jesus.
them, because the labor situation is so bleak for them, and a lot of times the parents know what's going on.
Hmm.
Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes it is really like, oh yeah, my daughter's going to have a real opportunity in Mumbai, let me send her off with this 25-year-old stranger. But sometimes they do know, and it's a big problem that like your economic situation, your social situation is so dire that you're willing for a couple $100 to send your daughter off to do who knows what. Very few of those girls are brought back to their families. It's a really sad situation.
It and I know that oftentimes a lot of that kind of tends to be a product of generational wealth, or sorry, generational poverty, the opposite actually. Which and I don't know this for certain, for a fact or anything. I don't have any statistics in front of me, but from what I've been made to understand, I know that generational poverty is very much a thing in India, specifically because of like histories with like caste systems and whatnot, and kind of to do with that. And I, it just knowing what I know from learning from you, kind of about tea and the tea industry, and I mean even I think on the grower profile for, oh shoot, and I closed it,
Mm-hmm.
for Heritage Tea Assam. I think there was even a piece about, or a little like line about getting paid like $1.50 a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a common like wage. Yeah,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
for tea pluckers, right? And it's just,
It's gone up a little bit, but yeah,
but
it's like that.
that's like that's only done because it's legal to do so, right? Like we only
Yeah.
pay like servers in America like, what, like $4, $3, $4 an hour because it's legal to do so.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the federal minimum wage for tipped workers is 275. Yes.
yeah, that's probably federal. I know in Missouri and in Illinois, which is where I've lived, it's higher than federal. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
that's good.
federal is. Um, but the point of what I'm getting at is that is like a perfect example of like, and specifically in India, I feel like a perfect example of like the leftovers of colonialism, of kind of like this basically government mandated poverty almost in a sense. And I'm not going to speak on that saying that I know that for a fact because I'm not an expert on India, but just knowing what I know about generational poverty and kind of wage laws and stuff like that, this is very much what it feels like, is almost
Hmm.
as if like the tea industry, the workers of the tea industry are being forced into this government mandated poverty in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So, as part of my own initiative and how I'm interpreting my own work as part of this
Sure.
decolonizing movement, that I think that we have a mutual passion for.
Hmm.
One of the slogans that I like to focus on is normalizing poverty, right? So
Hmm.
when I talk about these issues and when I started talking about these issues 10 years ago, peers of mine in the industry, incumbents in the industry would all tell me, don't talk about this stuff. If you talk about it and create a controversy and people start knowing about it, then people will start boycotting these teas. And there are millions of people that are dependent on those shitty wages. You know what I mean? Like, and
Oh,
I believed it. It's valid. It is valid. It is valid.
yeah. I see what you're
But
saying.
what I've come to learn, especially after this pandemic, because this pandemic kind of put all of them out of work for some time. And what happened? They thrived. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
they had their own soil, they had their own seeds, they had their own time and their own resources. And so a lot of times the solution around these issues that we're talking about is not directly, some dollar amount that we just need to inject in it to like rid the poverty. It's more of like an alternate perspective to look at like what is thriving. Thriving certainly is not money. In our society, it's gotten to that point where we equate thriving. But then, like, look at us. We could have all the money in the world here. And if there's going to be some type of shortage on things that we need that we have the money to buy, but it just literally doesn't exist for us, what good does that do for our livelihood? When, there's places like these small tea grower villages that like no money's coming in because there's no work, but they're still waking up every day and like getting their hands in soil and producing things that their family actually needs.
Right.
Yeah.
The pandemic is a very convoluted issue, I feel, because there are some things that did kind of happen as a result of it that had positive aspects to it.
Hmm.
Obviously, I say that with the understanding that, hundreds of thousands of people have died, and so it's not like a good thing. But
Hmm.
um, no, I was actually kind of curious, and I'm glad you brought that up. Kind of how the coronavirus pandemic has affected kind of some of that tea industry. But it sounds like it's affected it differently than I anticipated.
It's affected it in a big way. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like paint a rainbow picture
No, no,
around
no, no, no,
this.
no. Definitely not.
People are still feeling insecurity. uh like my friends, when at the beginning of the pandemic, when it was really uncertain for us, I mean it still is. we keep we keep thinking that like we're certain it's done, but that just proves how
Oh, we're
uncertain
so
we
far.
all.
Oh, we're
But
so far.
last year around this time, when I was calling my friends, like when I called Yanku and asked how they're doing, because I was really worried about them, they're like, we're not producing tea. The markets are closed. We can't even sell whatever tea we do have here. And then, I'm like, yeah, I'm freaking out here. I don't know how this is going to affect my industry and my market. And I actually have like really high overhead over here. So, if business dries up, like it's really going to negatively affect me. And I was like, well, what about y'all? Like, how's y'all's overhead? How, is your payment back to the banks and the other things that you have to manage? And they were like, we could manage, like we just live a slower, quieter life and just staying in the village and doing our thing here. Like, and we're not, growing the business. But like for like us, it's not a matter of growing the business. Yeah, we all would love to grow our businesses, but like our overhead here is very different than the overhead is, in these rural parts of the
Mhm.
world. Yeah.
Something that's just occurred to me as well, that I didn't think about until now,
Yeah.
is the timing, right? And I wouldn't have understood this a year ago, because I didn't understand this about tea. But the timing of when the pandemic really like broke out and got bad was right around the time of the first flush. And I don't know if that's if that, because that's when it kind of like really like took hold here. I don't know if that's the same in Asia at all, in India
Hmm.
at all. But it just occurred to me that like the most busy time potentially of the year for some of these tea farmers or some of these tea factories, everything's shut down. It just kind of occurred to me. How many steeps are you on right now?
I'm just on my second one.
Second one. Okay. You want to take a short break and then just beat the shit out of our leaves?
Yep.
Cool.
Do it.
Shall we get
Um,
back to it?
yeah. Hey, I'm playing a cool video now. Should I share it with you?
Please do.
Cool. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna have it in the same fashion I had it earlier for you. So okay, so where we are now, this is Rajan and his neighbor. He's introducing us to Rajan. Of course, is the tea maker from Heritage Assam Tea. Now he has a very long history of working as a tea planter in Assam, like the traditional,
Sure.
Assam, what you call it, industry estate system.
Sure.
He was a tea planter for the company that owns Lipton, Unilever. Unilever is that brand.
Oh,
He
okay.
worked there for a long time, and he's got a whole bunch of stories of why he retired from that and started his own thing. Because he retired and he was ready to be done, but then he's like, for the sake of my sons to leave a good legacy for them, I need to revive it. So where we are now is at his neighbor's place. He started working with his neighbor years prior to this. And what they're showing us here is this is all green compost from like their local area.
I saw that in the grower profile that they
Yeah.
like source compost.
Yeah, vermicompost
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
specifically,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
make it themselves. So it's not like a sourced type of thing. He started working with his neighbor. His neighbor was looking for work, looking for some type of business to start or something to do. And so he taught his neighbor how to do this vermicomposting. And what they do is they collect green waste from the local areas. So
Sure.
tree trimmings or any kind of agricultural trimmings that are left over, and they sit here for a few weeks to do like the initial processing, the initial breaking down of all the organic matter. And then from here, it gets sent to the vermicompost bins, which they're walking to show us now.
Oh, it's like you've done this before.
Um, and so, yeah, basically, this started out as a small project just on his own. He was making this stuff. And now, over the years, and as their network of small tea growers has expanded and they're looking for organic compost to work with, this guy has expanded his operation. This is pretty large vermicompost troughs. Like, usually you don't see them this large. And he'll be giving us a peek inside. So this is where all the stuff goes and where they add in the worms, and the worms further break down all the organic matter and make it bioavailable for the crops.
Do the worm thing. Yeah.
They do the worm thing.
It's a
Yeah,
technical
they eat
term.
and they poop. It's what they do. Um,
I I love there's like this meme every now and then about how worm poop is like the most valuable substance on earth, but sorry.
it is actually, well, even more than worm poop is chicken manure. Chicken manure
Yes.
by far is like the most beloved. Um, oh, we got a clarification that wild lettuce is not weed. All right, well then what is it?
Thank you for the
You
update.
um so they're using a lot of modern technology and operating this facility. Yeah, showing how they demonstrating how they send the compost over into the troughs. And there's two different troughs with two, different levels of worms that are doing their worm thing. But what's most impactful about this whole story is that, so like, this guy has a thriving business for himself and he's stoked. But Rajan's network of organic small tea growers has grown so much that now this vermicompost guy is oh, that's a brand new trough.
Oh.
So the worms aren't here yet. Yeah, so there's two different
Damn
troughs.
it.
This one, there's no worms yet. The worms get thrown in on the next trough. But yeah, that's where the soil and all of that organic matter will chill out for another few weeks. Like, this whole process, I think, takes 2 months from when
Mhm.
they collect that original organic matter until it's ready to be put into the soil. But the man that owns this property and set up this facility has now 76 other small, like, home-based businesses that he's trained how to set up, and they package their final compost and sell that in the market. And it's become like a really profitable opportunity for them. And like, I use the word profitable very differently here than I shouldn't even use that word. I just rather use the word dignified,
Mhm.
because the cash flow itself is not abundant. But what is abundant is the dignity, is the autonomy, is the independence, um, and then also the restoration of their soil. Like, they're selling this stuff to other small tea growers in their local area. So now this is going to be the worm bin.
Ooh.
Drum roll. We're finally going to get to see some worms. We'll definitely see some worms. There's lots of worms in there.
By the way, I'm boiling water for this like third steep here.
Oh, for this beating, for this
Yes.
tea assault that's about to happen.
I should do this every stream, Tia Salt. Just finish it off by just seeing what the leaves can take. So
He's
we're
got one. He's
looking.
got one in his
Yeah, yeah,
hand.
yeah.
He's
That's
got a
what I
worm
was.
in his hand.
There it is.
Yeah, so the worms, they eat the organic matter and they poop it out, and in their digestive system, they process all of it to make it all ready, nutrients ready for the soil. So it's really safe. Yeah, you just can't take, like, your dog turds out into the garden and think that that's gonna bring more
No,
vitality to your soil. Like,
not at all. No.
there's gotta be some processing there.
All right, my water is boiled. How long am I gonna steep this? How long? How long are we gonna?
Let's do 5 minutes.
5
Let's do
minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay.
I think that'll be fun. All right, I guess I got to do mine too. Worm turds, not dog turds. Well, yeah, worm turds, you could definitely just stick that right out in the garden. That's a difference. What if the dog eats the worm turds?
What happens then?
You have to, like, do the whole process all over again. These are the
So,
important questions to ask in life.
so he's been able to. His neighbor has kind of been able to build a business essentially from the vermicompost.
Yes.
See, and so this is something that because I work for my family, and we
Hmm.
we have a business, and this is something that we talk about a lot, and this specifically right here, and this is kind of something that I think is interesting about kind of the tea industry, the tea community, and something that I've learned is and the way I've heard it said before is that the same tide raises all ships.
Yep.
And I feel that this seems to be a recurring theme that I'm noticing when we get away from kind of these larger tea factories. And what are they called? It starts with a B.
Bought leaf factories.
The Botley factories. Um, and is that that sense of community, right? That sense of the tide raising all the ships, yada yada. The tide. And the reason why we talk about that kind of in my family's business is because specifically during this pandemic, we tried to really work with other businesses around the square, around our downtown area, in town and stuff, to kind of help promote each other.
Yep.
Because we really felt like that was the case. And something that I've really enjoyed through kind of like experiencing tea, learning tea from you, kind of or learning about where the tea comes from you, and kind of getting to know others, is there is very much that sense of community. And I enjoy kind of these stories of these tea farmers and these tea factory owners kind of taking back their own land, their own crop, because I mean India aren't they're the largest exporters of tea in the world, correct?
Um, I don't know. I think I don't know. I'm not sure of that. Let's look that up.
Yeah, I'm on it right now. Okay, so it's China, but
Yeah, I'm gonna say because like I think yeah, India actually ends up consuming a lot of their own tea,
that is
as
true.
does China.
It, I can't remember exactly what I'm trying to remember here. But I just know that obviously India exports a lot of tea, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's
And
true.
a lot of tea. And I mean, in all honesty, the entire country was enslaved or at least large portions of the country where it wasn't enslaved for the like production of tea. And so it's kind of nice to almost hear about, at least in some regard, this kind of like restructuring of how that works, and kind of this more community based mindset about it. So
Yeah.
um, that was my
Yeah.
half baked way of saying yay community.
Yay, community. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of community in India in these, tea growing areas, but then there is a lot of oppression and there's a
Right.
lot of like really baked in oppression that there's not even an effort to talk about it because yeah, don't talk about it. And that's something last time I traveled to India, I was dealing with some personal, trauma myself, feeling as if like everything and everybody was against me. Like I was being bullied by everybody. I just like everybody was trying to take advantage of me. And I shouldn't use the word everybody, some people, and I was consoling in my friends while I was traveling because it was just something on my mind. And then to like see their stories and their experiences of just like constantly having to deal with that stuff, constantly having to deal as if the entire world is bullying you. And I talk with them to say, how do you deal with this? How do you go day by day and just like not feel so much resentment? And they say, like the only thing that we can do, and the only thing you can do in your journey as you're feeling bullied is just to focus on your own path. And don't dwell on it, of course, and don't talk about it, especially don't talk about it with others, because that was what they had noticed in me, because like they would mention a name of somebody who had taken advantage of me or somebody that is infamous in the industry for being exploitive, and the American in me wanted to speak up and make sure they were held
Yes.
accountable for their actions. And their response to me was like, no, like you're wasting your energy, you're wasting your breath. and even caring about this stuff. And I'm like, I admire that
Yeah.
advice. Like, I think about it every day, especially coming from somebody who is constantly experiencing, a form of oppression in one way or another.
And I'm kind of glad that we got back to that like oppression kind of a little bit, just because something that we had talked about in our first episode when we were having the Yankee special,
Yeah.
was you had mentioned something about that Yanku had said to you about how the freedom from colonialism wasn't really as good for some as it was for others.
Yeah.
And it reminded me, because before we had recorded that episode, I had that kind of conversation with Sussman from Ketley on stream, and the story that he tells, because he doesn't have a lot of Darjeeling teas
Hmm.
on his shop, which is kind of,
Hmm.
which is fine. But the thing that he kind of talks about is that a lot of his farmers, the empowerment that was felt kind of from the freedom from colonialism, right? And it's super interesting to me that that's just not necessarily always the case, because it doesn't seem like that's the case necessarily in Assam. And like you said in the first episode, that doesn't seem like it's necessarily the case in Darjeeling as well. And it's just, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the comparison to me
His
is wild.
situation is very unique.
Right.
So whatever you heard from his perspectives is very, very unique to the tea industry. So, he may have just never been exposed to that,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. But and that's yeah, but that's essentially what I'm getting at, is just like very different experiences, but I think that kind of speaks to kind of the vast differences and experiences that can be had in the industry in the
Yeah.
world, as well as in a country the size of India. By the way, I have my 5 minute boiled tea, and the long leaf green tea is unbelievably dark for a green tea. Like, it looks like a really long steeped white tea.
Hmm.
But
I'll go ahead and decant mine.
the lid on the smoked tea, the smoke was much stronger on this go. The boiling water really brought out that.
I'm having to get in a snack because I know that this green tea is going to be super intense on the belly. So
Yes, I am ready.
I'm getting in some cherries. Me and Bitcoin are enjoying some cherries.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, cherry season.
Say, I am ready whenever you are.
Cool.
Which one do you want to do first? We did the smoked one last time, first. And we still haven't talked about why the long leaf is smoked.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll talk about that now. We're gonna have to talk about it because I have a feeling that this tea is gonna be undrinkable at this point
Probably.
with how we just assaulted.
Which one are you starting with?
Mm, I mean, I think for our insanity, we should start with the firewood green.
Okay. Cheers to you.
Cheers. Not bad.
Oh, maybe to you.
Did yours steep heavy?
Ooh, it seeped so heavy.
That's good. Good for you. Put some hair on your chest.
Lord knows there's not much. Ooh, that is bitter. There's like there's a taste kind of on the back of my tongue here from this, and it's like the crispy edge of a brownie. Not the chocolate portion, but like that crispy flavor, if that makes sense. I don't know what that crispy flavor is, but it's that crispy flavor.
Hmm. Like cooked sugar, like burnt sugar.
Yeah, like not quite caramelized, but kind of like in that kind of like cooked sugar range.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was the firewood green from Heritage Assam. Are you ready to move on to
I am.
the Arunachal longleaf?
Cheers.
All right. Cheers. From Arunachal Pradesh. Not as bad as I thought it would be.
Not as bad, but it tastes okay. Are you familiar with Lefroy?
What?
Lefroy.
I don't know. I don't know that. What is it?
Lefroy is an Isla Scotch. It is like
Okay.
the heaviest, smokiest, peatiest Isla Scotch. And it's like a campfire in your mouth. It like assaults your like like when you can taste things in your cheeks. Like it
Hmm.
assaults like your entire mouth. I love it, first of all.
Okay.
But
Good,
like
good,
it
good.
assaults your mouth. So this is very reminiscent of that.
What was that called again? Dawn wants to know.
Lafroig,
Yeah.
Laphroiag. And the
Got that, Dawn?
waves and the waves lap Lafroig. That's their tagline.
All right. So now to talk about this tea and why it came out so smoky.
Yes, please.
Both of these teas are steamed green teas.
What? Really?
Yeah, they're steamed. Actually, let me show a video. I can show you a video of them being steamed. I got a really good video of the steamer. They're both steamed green teas. And of course, Rajan set up their factories. Really, I don't have a video of it here.
I can't say I
Yeah.
hate this like abuse. The tea that's coming out of the abuse.
Uh-huh.
I definitely prefer the shorter.
Yeah, it's like nice. It's nice when tea is gentle and soft and just
Mm-hmm.
welcoming versus just like boom.
But something that I like about this is, and something that I've heard others say is really seeing what the tea can handle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really
Yep.
finding out, and that really I think speaks to kind of like something that I'm always talking about when it comes to Kung Fu Cha is it's an opportunity to get to know the tea, it's, to get to know the tea's personality, kind of like the terroir, where it comes from. I feel like honestly making tea this way is much more like having a conversation with the leaf, and part of that is very much just abusing the leaf sometimes and finding out what the hell it can take.
So true. Yeah, that's why they call it trial by fire.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm having trouble getting video up, so I'm not gonna bother, trying to
No
do that. I'll
worries. No
just
worries.
explain it. So yeah, they use a very rudimentary process of steaming. They have like these large chambers. There's like a boiler at the bottom that's wood fired and boils the water to create the steam, and then the steam passes through the trays of tea that are put inside this chamber.
Is that video on the grower profile, or
It
are photos of
is,
that? Because I've
yeah,
got the
yeah,
grower profile pulled up. I can pull this up real
yeah.
fast
You
for you.
should be able to see. It's like one of the main. That's why I'm like surprised it's not in here. It's like one of the
Yeah,
main.
yeah, yeah. I got it right here.
You got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like one of the main videos that we have spending time with them. Um, yeah, I guess my
yeah.
what do you call it?
I'm pretty
My
sure I'm looking at the right
photo
thing.
album here is getting confusing. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff missing in this album. I've got to figure out if things went in different spots, but um, the steam is created with a wood fire. A
Sure.
lot of a lot of these tea makers are using wood fire. They're not using electric powered equipment for
Oh,
their tea processing. They're using wood fired equipment just because electricity is a big issue in these places. Like you're constantly dealing with power outages, and if you're in the middle of processing, that cannot happen. You will
right. That's
destroy your
bad.
entire batch. So if you're going to have electrical equipment, you have to have a generator, and that's a whole other expense that a lot of these factories can't handle.
Because that's gas too.
Yep, yeah, yeah, there's costs. There's lots of
Yeah.
costs to it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So wood is something, there's cost to wood, but it's just something a lot easier to manage. So a lot of
Yeah.
these factories have wood powered drying equipment, withering equipment, and then of course steaming if they are steaming the tea. Now at Heritage, where they make the firewood green, their steaming equipment is all located outdoors, which is the most ideal. Like the tea master does have to take the trays of tea from inside the factory outside to the steamer to process them and bring them back in. but at least they don't have to worry about the smoke from the fire burning. Now, the factory in Arunachal, they have all of their equipments indoors inside the factory, and usually it wouldn't be that big of a problem. Like the smoke that's released from that equipment is not that bad of a problem. But this particular year that this tea was harvested was an exceptionally rainy season.
Got it.
And so all of their wood was waterlogged.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you ever had a campfire with wet wood.
I,
Remember what
I
happened?
I'm from the Midwest. I've had yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
get smoked out.
lot of smoke.
You
Lots of
get smoked out.
popping, crackling smoke. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where you're
Yeah,
at.
so that's why this tea is smoky.
So what you're saying is, if I'm understanding correctly, is that there was smoke that was kind of like escaping into the steam potentially, because
Well,
of
it's in all of the process. So like all the tea is processed, the rolling, the drying, the storage, it's all happening in this one facility, in this one room.
okay, I understand. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so okay, yeah,
So
okay.
the
Sorry.
smoke is just like getting infused in the tea throughout the entire process.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't say I dislike it though.
Yeah, it's interesting. And that's why I'm saying that like this tea, the profile on this Arunachal longleaf is actually closer to what our clients had originally liked in the firewood green.
Yeah.
But this year, the firewood green, they didn't smoke it enough, obviously, because the smoke is very subtle and light. But then the Arunachal longleaf came back super smoky. And so yeah, a lot of people ended up sourcing this tea in the place of this tea. Now, I did just get the brand new batch of the firewood green, and it's fire. They did good.
They
They
did
good.
good.
They
Okay.
did good this year.
Good.
They did good this season.